In late 2021, a quiet city in New Hampshire became the center of one of the most disturbing missing child investigations in recent American history. The case involved a small girl named Harmony Montgomery. Harmony was only 5 years old. At first, the public didn't even know she was missing. In fact, for more than 2 years, almost no one realized that the young girl had disappeared. When the truth finally began to surface, it shocked investigators, social workers, and communities across the United States. Because the story revealed a tragic combination of family violence, system failures, and unanswered questions. At the center of the investigation was Harmony's father, Adam Montgomery. But to understand how the case unfolded, investigators first had to look at Harmony's early life. Harmony Montgomery was born in 2014. From the beginning, her childhood was complicated. Her parents struggled with addiction and legal problems, which created instability in the household. Because of these issues, Harmony spent much of her early life in the care of child protection services. Eventually, she was placed with foster families. Many people who met Harmony during that time described her as a cheerful and energetic child. Despite the challenges around her, she was known for her bright personality. Teachers and caregivers said she enjoyed playing with other children and often tried to make people laugh. But the legal situation surrounding her family was still complicated. For years, courts attempted to determine the safest long-term arrangement for Harmony. Then, in 2019, a judge made a decision that would later become a major focus of the investigation. The court granted custody of Harmony to her father, Adam Montgomery. At the time, some people involved in the case expressed concerns about the decision. Adam Montgomery already had a history of legal trouble. He had previous arrests and had struggled with substance abuse. However, the court believed that placing Harmony with her father would give her a chance to reunite with her biological family. So in early 2019, Harmony moved to live with Adam in New Hampshire. For a short time, the arrangement appeared to work. Harmony lived in a small apartment with her father, her stepmother, and other children in the household. But according to later witness statements, the situation inside the home was far from stable. Neighbors and relatives would later describe frequent arguments and signs of tension within the family. Harmony's stepmother at the time was Kayla Montgomery. According to later testimony, the household was struggling financially. The family moved frequently and sometimes stayed in temporary housing. As investigators would later discover, the living conditions were often difficult. But at the time, no one outside the immediate household fully understood what was happening inside the apartment. According to witness accounts that emerged years later, Harmony's life inside the home became increasingly troubled. Some people later reported seeing signs that the young girl may have been experiencing mistreatment. But because the family moved often and kept a low profile, many warning signs went unnoticed. Then, in late 2019, something happened that would become the central mystery of the entire case. Harmony Montgomery disappeared. But no missing person report was filed. No police investigation was launched. No public alert was issued. For months, and eventually years, the little girl was simply gone. And almost no one realized it. This shocking fact would later become one of the most disturbing aspects of the investigation. How could a 5-year-old child vanish without anyone noticing? The answer began to emerge only years later. In late 2021, social workers attempted to check on Harmony's welfare after concerns were raised about her safety. But when investigators attempted to locate her, they discovered something alarming. No one had seen Harmony for a very long time. Authorities began asking questions. Where was she? Who had last seen her? And why had no one reported her disappearance? As police began investigating the situation, they quickly discovered that the last person known to have custody of Harmony was her father, Adam Montgomery. When officers attempted to question him about his daughter's whereabouts, his answers raised even more suspicion. At first, he claimed that Harmony was living with her mother. But investigators soon determined that this was not true. Her mother had not seen the child in years. Detectives continued pressing for answers. But the more questions they asked, the more confusing the story became. Eventually, investigators realized they were dealing with something far more serious than a missing child case. They began treating the situation as a possible homicide investigation. Meanwhile, the public was only just learning about the case. When news reports revealed that a young girl had been missing for years without anyone realizing it, the story spread rapidly across the country. People were stunned. How could such a young child disappear without immediate action? As the investigation intensified, authorities began examining the actions of Adam Montgomery during the years since Harmony was last seen. They also began interviewing neighbors, relatives, and former friends of the family. What they learned from those interviews would soon reveal a disturbing pattern of violence and neglect. And the answers they uncovered would lead investigators toward a heartbreaking conclusion about what may have happened to 5-year-old Harmony Montgomery. But the full truth about her disappearance was only beginning to emerge. And as detectives continued digging into the past, they would soon uncover a story filled with secrets, lies, and a tragedy that might never be completely solved. After investigators realized that Harmony Montgomery had been missing for years without anyone reporting it, the case quickly became a priority for law enforcement in New Hampshire. Detectives began working urgently to reconstruct the timeline of Harmony's life after she moved in with her father. At the center of the investigation was the man who had been responsible for her care. Adam Montgomery. When police first questioned Adam Montgomery about his daughter's whereabouts, his explanation immediately raised concerns. He claimed that Harmony was living with her biological mother. But investigators quickly checked that claim. They contacted Harmony's mother, who told them something alarming. She had not seen her daughter in years. This revelation intensified the investigation. If Harmony was not with her mother, where was she? Detectives continued questioning Adam Montgomery, but his answers became increasingly inconsistent. He provided vague explanations and changed parts of his story. For investigators, this behavior raised serious suspicion. Soon, police began expanding the investigation. They interviewed neighbors, relatives, and former friends of the family. One by one, these witnesses began sharing troubling details about what life inside the Montgomery household had been like. Among the most important witnesses was Harmony's former stepmother, Kayla Montgomery. Kayla had once lived in the same home as Adam and Harmony. But by the time the investigation began, she was no longer living with him. When detectives spoke with her, she told them a story that would dramatically change the direction of the case. According to Kayla, Harmony had not disappeared suddenly. Instead, something terrible had happened inside the family home. Kayla told investigators that during late 2019, Adam Montgomery had become increasingly violent. She described a pattern of anger and physical abuse. According to her account, Harmony had sometimes been the target of that violence. These claims deeply disturbed investigators. But Kayla's testimony became even more shocking as she continued describing what she said had happened one night in December 2019. According to Kayla, Adam had become enraged while they were driving in their car. Harmony had been sitting in the back seat. During the argument, Adam allegedly struck the child. Kayla told detectives that the attack had been severe. Afterward, Harmony stopped responding. According to Kayla's statement, Adam realized that the child was no longer moving. What happened next would become one of the most disturbing parts of the investigation. Kayla told police that Adam refused to call for help. Instead, he continued driving. Over the next several hours, she claimed that Adam tried to hide what had happened. Investigators later confirmed that during the following days, the family moved between several locations, including temporary housing and hotels. According to Kayla's testimony, Adam took steps to conceal the truth about Harmony's disappearance. For detectives, this statement became a crucial piece of evidence. However, there was one major problem. Harmony's body had never been found. Without physical evidence confirming her death, investigators had to rely heavily on witness testimony and circumstantial evidence. Even so, the information provided by Kayla Montgomery helped detectives build a clearer picture of what may have happened in late 2019. As the investigation continued, police began gathering additional evidence to support the timeline. They reviewed phone records. They examined housing records and hotel stays. They also interviewed other witnesses who had interacted with the family during that period. Some witnesses reported seeing Adam Montgomery behaving aggressively toward Harmony. Others described the chaotic living conditions the family had experienced. Meanwhile, authorities began searching several locations connected to the family. Investigators hoped they might find physical evidence or possibly even Harmony's remains. But despite extensive searches, the young girl was never found. The lack of physical evidence made the case even more heartbreaking. For the public, the mystery of what had happened to Harmony Montgomery became deeply troubling. A 5-year-old child had vanished without a trace. And the only person who appeared to know what had happened was refusing to cooperate with investigators. Eventually, prosecutors decided they had gathered enough evidence to bring charges against Adam Montgomery. He was arrested and charged with several crimes related to Harmony's disappearance. The charges included second-degree murder, abuse of a corpse, and witness tampering. The case quickly attracted national attention. Many people were shocked by the disturbing timeline of events. Even more troubling was the fact that Harmony had been missing for so long before anyone realized it. For her family and the community, the situation raised painful questions about how such a tragedy could have gone unnoticed. Meanwhile, Adam Montgomery remained in custody while awaiting trial. Prosecutors began preparing their case, building a timeline based on witness testimony, digital records, and evidence collected during the investigation. But the trial that followed would reveal even more disturbing details about the final days of Harmony Montgomery's life. And the courtroom battle would determine whether her father would be held responsible for her disappearance. As the investigation into the disappearance of Harmony Montgomery continued, prosecutors and detectives began building one of the most difficult cases they had ever faced. Unlike many homicide investigations, there was one major obstacle. Harmony's body had never been found. Without physical evidence confirming her death, prosecutors needed to rely on witness testimony, digital records, and circumstantial evidence to build their case against her father, Adam Montgomery. Despite the challenges, investigators believed they had uncovered a disturbing timeline that explained what had likely happened to the 5-year-old girl. Much of that timeline came from the testimony of Harmony's former stepmother, Kayla Montgomery. According to Kayla, the events leading to Harmony's disappearance began in late 2019. At the time, the family was struggling with severe financial problems. They frequently moved between apartments, hotels, and temporary housing. Sometimes the family even slept inside their car. The instability created constant stress inside the household. According to Kayla's testimony, Adam Montgomery often became angry and unpredictable during this period. She described multiple occasions in which he acted violently toward members of the family. But one night in December 2019 would become the most important moment in the investigation. Kayla told investigators that she, Adam, and Harmony had been driving together in their car. During the drive, Adam allegedly became enraged. According to her statement, he began yelling and eventually struck Harmony in the back seat. Kayla later told investigators that the attack was severe. After the incident, she said Harmony stopped responding. According to her account, Adam quickly realized something was terribly wrong. Instead of calling emergency services, Kayla claimed he continued driving. This decision would become a key point in the prosecution's case. Investigators believed that Adam Montgomery had realized Harmony was dead and had chosen to conceal the crime instead of seeking help. Over the next several days, Kayla said Adam took steps to hide what had happened. She told detectives that Harmony's body remained in the vehicle for a period of time while the family continued moving between locations. These claims deeply disturbed investigators. But once again, there was no physical evidence confirming the details. Harmony's body had never been located. Detectives spent months searching locations connected to the Montgomery family. They examined former apartments, storage areas, and locations where the family had stayed during that period. Search teams used specialized equipment and forensic techniques in an attempt to find any trace of the missing child. But despite these efforts, Harmony's remains were never discovered. Even without the body, prosecutors believed they had enough evidence to present the case in court. They charged Adam Montgomery with second-degree murder along with several other crimes connected to Harmony's disappearance. The charges included abuse of a corpse, falsifying physical evidence, and witness tampering. According to prosecutors, the evidence showed a clear pattern of attempts to hide what had happened. They argued that Adam had lied repeatedly about Harmony's whereabouts. At first, he claimed she had gone to live with her mother. Later, he provided different explanations to investigators. Each version of the story conflicted with the available evidence. Prosecutors also presented digital records showing Adam's movements during the period when Harmony disappeared. Phone records, housing documents, and witness testimony helped investigators reconstruct the timeline. Together, these pieces of evidence formed the foundation of the case against him. Meanwhile, the public continued following the investigation closely. Many people were deeply troubled by the fact that a young child had disappeared for years without anyone realizing it. The case raised difficult questions about failures in the child protection system. How could a 5-year-old girl vanish without immediate action? Why had no one checked on her sooner? These questions became part of the broader discussion surrounding the case. But for Harmony's family, the most painful reality was the uncertainty. Without the discovery of her body, they could never receive full closure. Still, they hoped the legal process would bring some form of justice. As the trial approached in 2024, prosecutors prepared to present their evidence to a jury. They would rely heavily on witness testimony, particularly the statements from Kayla Montgomery. The defense team, however, planned to challenge those statements. They argued that the case relied too heavily on one witness and lacked direct physical evidence. According to the defense, the absence of Harmony's body meant prosecutors could not prove exactly what had happened. The courtroom battle promised to be intense. On one side were investigators and prosecutors determined to hold someone responsible for the disappearance of a 5-year-old girl. On the other side were defense attorneys arguing that the evidence left too many unanswered questions. The jury would soon hear the full story. And their decision would determine whether Adam Montgomery would spend the rest of his life in prison for the disappearance of his daughter. But even after the trial concluded, one haunting mystery would remain. Where was Harmony Montgomery? And would her remains ever be found? The final chapter of the case would soon unfold in the courtroom, where the fate of the accused father would finally be decided. As the trial of Adam Montgomery began in early 2024, the courtroom in Manchester, New Hampshire became the center of national attention. For more than 2 years, investigators have been trying to uncover what happened to 5-year-old Harmony Montgomery. Now the case had reached its most important stage. The trial would determine whether Adam Montgomery would be held responsible for the disappearance and death of his daughter. One of the most difficult challenges for prosecutors was the absence of Harmony's body. Despite months of searching across multiple locations, investigators had never found her remains. Because of this, the prosecution needed to rely heavily on witness testimony, digital evidence, and the timeline of events that investigators had reconstructed. Prosecutors began the trial by explaining the story of Harmony's life and the circumstances that led to her living with her father in 2019. They described how the young girl had been placed in Adam Montgomery's custody despite his troubled past. Then they walked the jury through the timeline of events that followed. According to prosecutors, the most critical testimony came from Kayla Montgomery, Harmony's former stepmother. Kayla testified that she witnessed Adam become violent toward Harmony in December 2019. She told the jury about the night when Adam allegedly attacked the child while they were driving in a car. According to her testimony, Harmony stopped responding after the attack. Kayla described how Adam refused to seek medical help and instead attempted to conceal what had happened. Prosecutors argued that this testimony explained why Harmony was never seen again. They told the jury that Adam Montgomery had chosen to hide the truth rather than report the death. Throughout the trial, prosecutors also presented additional evidence that supported their timeline. They showed records of the family moving between hotels and temporary housing during the period when Harmony disappeared. Witnesses testified that the family's living conditions were unstable and that Adam frequently behaved aggressively. Investigators also presented evidence showing that Adam Montgomery had repeatedly lied about Harmony's whereabouts. At one point, he told authorities that Harmony was living with her mother. But investigators later confirmed that this claim was false. Each of these statements, prosecutors argued, showed that Adam had been attempting to mislead investigators. The defense team, however, presented a different interpretation of the evidence. They argued that the case relied almost entirely on the testimony of Kayla Montgomery. According to the defense, Kayla had reasons to cooperate with prosecutors and might not have been a reliable witness. They also emphasized the lack of physical evidence. Without Harmony's body, they argued, prosecutors could not prove exactly what had happened. The defense suggested that there were still unanswered questions about the case. They urged the jury to consider whether the prosecution had truly proven the charges beyond a reasonable doubt. As the trial continued, the emotional impact of the case became clear. Members of Harmony's extended family attended the proceedings and listened as witnesses described the events surrounding her disappearance. For them, the trial represented the only opportunity to seek justice for the young girl who had vanished years earlier. After several weeks of testimony, the trial reached its final stage. Both sides delivered their closing arguments. Prosecutors reminded the jury of the timeline they had presented. They emphasized Adam Montgomery's history of violence, the testimony describing the attack, and the repeated lies about Harmony's location. They argued that these facts clearly showed what had happened. The defense responded by highlighting the uncertainties that still existed. They reminded the jury that no physical evidence had ever been recovered and that many details of the case remained unknown. After hearing the final arguments, the jury left the courtroom to begin deliberations. For Harmony's family, the waiting period was filled with anxiety and grief. They had spent years searching for answers about what had happened to the 5-year-old girl. Now they waited for the jury's decision. After deliberating, the jury returned with a verdict. Adam Montgomery was found guilty of second-degree murder and several additional charges related to the disappearance of his daughter. The verdict meant that he would face decades in prison. For Harmony's family, the decision brought a sense of justice. However, it did not end the mystery that still surrounded the case. Because even after the trial concluded, one heartbreaking question remained unanswered. The body of Harmony Montgomery had never been found. For investigators and the family, the search for answers continues. They hope that one day the location of Harmony's remains will finally be discovered. Until that moment, the story of Harmony Montgomery remains one of the most haunting missing child cases in recent American history. A case that began with a young girl who disappeared without anyone noticing. And a tragedy that revealed how easily a vulnerable child can fall through the cracks of the system meant to protect her.